And greetings, friends. Today I want to talk to you about 1 Chronicles, the 9th chapter, verses 1 through 3. A lot of people take these scriptures to try and prove that the lost 10 tribes of Israel returned to the promised land with the Jews after the Babylonian captivity. And they all settled there in the promised land, and therefore all 12 tribes are known as the Jews today. Now, if you notice verse 1, it says this, 1 Chronicles 9:1, it says, "So all Israel were reckoned by genealogies." This is, of course, what happened in the past. "And behold, they were written in the book of the kings of Israel and Judah." These were already written. It's talking about the past. "Who were carried away to Babylon for their transgressions." Here, Ezra adds in why Judah, not Israel, they got taken away in the Assyrian captivity, but why Judah was carried away captive because of their transgressions. They got carried away captive to Babylon. Now notice verse 2. It says, "Now the first inhabitants that dwelt," that word dwelt is italicized, not in the original, "that dwelt in their possessions, in their cities, were the Israelites." Talking about the 10 tribes of Israel. "The priests, the Levites, the Nethinims. And in Jerusalem dwelt of the children of Judah," those are the Jews, "of the children of Benjamin, who are part of the kingdom of Judah, and of the children of Ephraim and Manasseh." And people say, there you go. The 10 tribes returned with the Jews after the Babylonian captivity, dwelt in the land of Palestine, and now all 12 tribes are known as the Jews today. Is that what the scripture is really telling us? Well, in verse 2, if you look where it says, "Now the first inhabitants," when you look into the Hebrew, in 72, Strong 72:23 and 72:21, it should read, it's talking really about a former thing of old past. It's talking about the former inhabitants of the land. If you notice here in the K&D commentary of the Old Testament, it renders the passage this way: "And the former inhabitants which lived in their possessions, in their cities, were Israel, the priests, the Levites, and the Nethinim. And in Jerusalem there dwelt of the sons of Judah, Benjamin, Ephraim, and Manasseh." It's talking about the former inhabitants of the land before the exile. This is what it's really speaking of. And when you look at the context of verse 1, it's talking about the past. So it's talking about the former inhabitants of the land. And this commentary goes on to say that the former inhabitants can only be those who dwelt in their possessions before Judah was led captive into Babylon. This could hardly be misunderstood by any commentator. It can only be understood of the pre-exilic inhabitants. So that's what it's really speaking of. It's not talking about when the Jews returned to the promised land. It's talking about the former inhabitants, what happened before, who dwelt in their cities before Judah and Israel got taken away into captivity. Now, if you notice in verse 3, Ephraim and Manasseh is mentioned, but there, and of course, it's talking about that they were the former inhabitants of Jerusalem. But if you notice, the genealogies of the tribes of Ephraim and Manasseh is not mentioned. Why? This commentary goes on to say, the reason of that is probably this: that only single families and individuals from among the latter, talking about Ephraim and Manasseh, dwelt there, while the register only makes mention of the heads of the larger family groups in the population of Jerusalem. It's talking about the heads of the main tribes that were dwelling in Jerusalem. These people were just delegates when Jerusalem was the capital of all Israel. They had delegates of each tribe living in the capital. And this is why no genealogy is mentioned of Ephraim and Manasseh in this scripture. They were delegates in Jerusalem representing their tribes. So when you look at this context, you will see that it's not talking about the Jews and the lost 10 tribes returning to the promised land. It's not talking about that. It's talking about the former inhabitants, where they dwelt in Jerusalem, in their lands. It's talking about the former inhabitants before they got taken away into captivity. So to say that these scriptures prove that the lost 10 tribes of Israel returned with the Jews after the Babylonian captivity is just another Bible misconception.